a local manufacturing company that had been in operation for over 50 years. Among its diverse workforce was James Carter, a diligent and respected black worker who had been with the company for nearly a decade. James was known for his unwavering dedication and impeccable record. He had always been the first to arrive and the last to leave, earning the admiration of his colleagues and the trust of his supervisors. One day, as James was engrossed in his routine tasks, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance of the factory floor. Mr. Thompson, the stern and authoritative head of security, stormed in with a group of guards. His eyes were filled with suspicion, and his voice carried an accusatory tone. "James Carter," he called out, his voice echoing through the large hall. The workers paused, their eyes darting between Mr. Thompson and James, who stood bewildered. "Yes, sir," James responded, his confusion evident. "Step forward," Mr. Thompson ordered. James complied, his heart pounding in his chest. "We have reason to believe you've been involved in the theft of valuable materials from the company," Mr. Thompson declared, waving a folder of documents. A collective gasp swept through the room. James's mind raced as he tried to comprehend the accusation. He had always been honest, his integrity unshakable. "That's impossible," James stammered. "I haven't taken anything." Mr. Thompson narrowed his eyes. "We've received an anonymous tip and have surveillance footage that places you at the scene during the times of the thefts." James felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He knew he was innocent, but the weight of the accusation was crushing. His colleagues, who had once been his friends, now looked at him with doubt. Despite his protests, James was escorted to a small, dimly lit room for questioning. Hours passed as he vehemently denied the accusations, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The evidence, though circumstantial, painted a damning picture. News of the accusation spread like wildfire through Maplewood. The once respected James Carter was now the subject of whispered conversations and pointed fingers. The trust he had built over the years crumbled beneath the weight of suspicion. Feeling cornered and desperate, James decided to take matters into his own hands. He knew he had to find the real culprit to clear his name. With a determination fueled by his unwavering belief in his innocence, he began to investigate. He reviewed the surveillance footage, scrutinized the logs, and interviewed his colleagues. As he delved deeper, he discovered inconsistencies and a pattern that pointed to someone else, a recently hired worker named Greg. Greg had always kept to himself, rarely interacting with others, and had a history that raised more questions than answers. James gathered his findings and presented them to the management. His evidence was compelling, and after a thorough investigation, the truth came to light. Greg had been the real thief, using James as a scapegoat to divert suspicion. With the real culprit exposed, James's name was cleared. The company issued a formal apology, and his colleagues expressed their regret for doubting him. However, the scars from the ordeal ran deep. James was determined not only to rebuild his reputation but also to use his experience to bring about meaningful change in the workplace and the broader community. James's return to Evergreen Industries was marked by a subtle shift in the atmosphere. While most of his colleagues welcomed him back with genuine apologies, some remained distant, their trust in the system and each other shaken. Mr. Sullivan, the CEO of Evergreen Industries, was a man known for his pragmatism and business acumen. He had always been somewhat detached from the day-to-day operations, but James's case had highlighted a glaring issue that needed addressing. "Mr. Sullivan, thank you for meeting with me," James began, taking a seat across from the CEO in his spacious office. "Of course, James. I owe you that much after what you've been through," Mr. Sullivan replied, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. James took a deep breath. I want to ensure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. The accusation and the way it was handled exposed weaknesses in our company's policies. We need to implement stronger checks and balances to protect our employees and foster an environment of fairness and transparency. Mr. Sullivan nodded slowly. I agree, James. What do you propose? Over the next hour, James laid out his plan. It included the creation of an independent review board to handle accusations and disputes, mandatory diversity and bias training for all employees, and the establishment of an anonymous reporting system to ensure that all voices could be heard without fear of retaliation. He also suggested regular town hall meetings where employees could voice their concerns directly to management. Mr. Sullivan listened intently. This is a comprehensive plan, James. I'm impressed. We'll need to get buy-in from the board and the HR department, but I believe this is a step in the right direction. James felt a glimmer of hope. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I'm willing to help in any way I can. With the CEO's support, James's proposals began to take shape. The independent review board was established, comprising employees from various departments as well as external experts to ensure impartiality. Diversity and bias training sessions were scheduled, with a focus on fostering empathy and understanding among the workforce. The town hall meetings became a regular fixture at Evergreen Industries. During the first meeting, James stood before his colleagues, sharing his story and the lessons he had learned. His honesty and vulnerability struck a chord with many, and the meeting ended with a renewed sense of unity and purpose. As weeks turned into months, the changes started to yield results. Employees felt more empowered to speak up, knowing their concerns would be taken seriously. The anonymous reporting system allowed for a more open dialogue, and the independent review board ensured that all cases were handled with fairness and transparency. As time passed, James and Mr. Thompson formed an unlikely alliance. They collaborated on initiatives to improve the workplace culture, and their partnership became a symbol of reconciliation and progress. He continued to advocate for equality and justice, not just in the workplace but in all areas of life. His voice became one of the leading voices for justice in the society. Maplewood transformed from a town marred by suspicion and bias to a beacon of inclusivity and justice. He held a conference. Theme of the conference was From Adversity to Advocacy, Stories of Change, and James was the keynote speaker. He looked out at the audience, seeing faces filled with hope and determination. My story is not just about overcoming an unjust accusation, he began. It's about the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the incredible impact we can have when we work together to create a better world. The audience erupted in applause, and James felt a deep sense of fulfillment.